Here at the Great Debaters Contest, we've taken it upon ourselves to bring you the very best talent Kenya has to offer in debate. And today the motion is whether religious signs should be banned from public buildings.
Thank you very much, Mariam. And I am Austin Nyambok. Proposing the motion, we have Dagoretti High School. And opposing the motion, we have Mbooni Girls High School. Both teams have simple messages for each other. Mbooni tells Dagoretti, wait and see. And for Dagoretti says, we're giants, so expect what giants do, destroy. So, may the debates begin.
The motion this week is religious signs should be banned from national buildings. Proposing the motion, Dagoretti High School. Opposing the motion, Mbooni Girls Secondary School. Each contestant has 3 minutes to make their submissions. The audience also gets a chance to put their questions to each team. Each side will have an additional 1 minute to make a final statement. The judge's decision is final. The winning school will get an ICT chill-out zone with the widescreen TV, computers, webcams, and internet connection. The teacher from the winning school gets 100,000 shillings courtesy of Chase Bank. The winning students each get a tablet courtesy of Safaricom, a gift hamper from Unilever, and a gift hamper from mimi.co.ke. And together, they all win the title, The Great Debaters. May the best school win.
The first proposer, you may take the stage and destroy it.
Before you stands Sarah Ndego of Dagoretti High School. I, for one, would like to state that I consider myself a responsible citizen of the world and cannot allow ourselves that we continue being this way and support this and oppose this motion and watch the world waste away. The reason for my stand is this. For one, I propose that they should be done away with to create religious and political neutrality. There's also to do away with the prejudice that is associated with religious profiling. And we also have some of the signs might be offensive to believers of other religious doctrines. Okay, on to my first point on religious and political neutrality. Many are the times we find ourselves, human beings, complaining that the world is not fair. Then I think it's right to say that we all crave for a level playing field. What I say to this is that this can only be achieved where we have government systems being neutral and independent of the religions running within its country, and therefore according equal chance to all. A case study is where in Quebec we have a large cross suspended above the Speaker of the National Assembly seat. This, you see, is discriminatory to the other religions in that country, which have not been represented and are therefore termed as minorities. But let's remember, minority or no minority, we still have our rights. And thus I propose that the religious signs should be done away with. To my second point, after the 9/11 bombings, most of the European countries associated people who were Muslim attire that is largely related to Islam, such as the hijab, with allegiance to the Islamist extremist groups. And this we see is discriminatory also to such people in that this might not be true. I mean, I'm just doing what my good Quran tells me to. And to this I say that they should be done away with, so that we do not have such instances where you are judged because of how you dressed. I label you a terrorist, a thief, just because of the attire you have on. I mean, this is simply not just. And on to my third point. Some religious signs might conflict and be offensive to believers of other religious doctrines. Thank you.
First opposer, you have 3 minutes.
Winfred Mule, Mbooni Girls. I strongly oppose the motion that religious signs should be banned from national buildings. What are religious signs? They show a particular belief, faith, or understanding of a society. National buildings are built using state funds and serve the whole state. Some of these religious signs include a cross as used by the Christians, the crescent moon and a star for the Islam, and a six-pointed star of the Judaism. These signs on buildings were put there with a reason and for a purpose. They should not be burnt because it is like denying people their freedom of worship. Let's take an example of the Kenyan Constitution. It is clearly stipulated in Chapter 4 on fundamental rights and freedoms that every citizen has a right to conscience, religion, and belief. That is why they have the religious signs on buildings so as to embrace their religion. Banning religious signs from buildings is the same as preventing people from expressing their diverse views on issues. Let's take an example of the Star of David found in the Israel's parliamentary building, which signifies unity. By removing this religious sign, it is going to mean that we are bringing about division in that country. The sign is meant to unite the people, not to divide them. So removing it from there is bringing about division. Are we trying to divide countries or unite them? Banning religious signs on national building triggers conflict between the state and the existing religion. Some of the states were formed on a basis of religion. Take an example of Saudi Arabia and Qatar. These nations came up as a result of Islam, which is a religion. They have the religious signs on buildings so as to embrace their freedom of worship. This is also helping the people to be united, being united by a common religion, by observing the signs that they have. Removing these signs is surely and sadly going to bring about conflicts between the states and the religions found in that country. Banning religious signs on the national buildings is not going to promote acceptance of the existing religions. What is wrong with having a religious sign? There is nothing wrong. So, religious signs should not be banned from national buildings. Thank you.
A rebuttal from the proposing team. You have 3 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen of the House, Daniel Kihori here to strongly propose the motion that religious signs should be banned from national buildings. But first, to counter what my opponent had said. First of all, faith is what we believe in, not what we wear. Whatever symbols we have whatever signs we have are just symbols of our beliefs. They are not our beliefs. They therefore do not harm anyone if they're not there. And freedom of worship of Islam in Saudi Arabia suppresses the other minority religions, and I shall come to that with my points. So religious signs should be banned from national buildings because, one, they lead to imposition of one religion over the entire country or nation. And two, for counter-terrorism or security purposes. So they lead to imposition of one religion on another. I shall give a case study of the encryption of the 10 Commandments on the Supreme Court building of the United States of America, which clearly shows that Christianity is, in fact, the main religion in USA. What about our minor religions that are there? The Judaism, the Islam, the Sikhs. In the United Kingdom, the Queen's scepter, the Queen's throne, and the Queen's orb and her crown all have crosses, indicating the Catholic doctrine to be, in fact, the ruling or superior religion in the country. This is an impression of a religious totalitarian society which may undermine the other religions. The undermining of these religions will spark off conflicts. The conflicts will lead to a lot of war because people will strive to defend their faiths. And we all know how chaos leads to destruction, and loss of life. Therefore, they should be banned from national buildings. On to my second point. They should be banned for security or counterterrorism purposes. It is a prerequisite that when one enters a national building, they identify themselves using observable features. But the burqa, a religious clothing for women in the Islam society, hides facial features like the mouth, the ears, and the nose. These are requirements for one to be identified, thus hindering comfortable entry of these people because they will be frisked in order to be observed and searched. The kirpan, a sword carried by Sikh elders, is in fact a weapon. We cannot threaten the security of our national buildings by allowing entry of a sword into the building. So banning of the religious signs in national buildings will ensure that the weapons do not threaten the security. And this statement I relegate to the realm of unimportance, that I may bring you to my side, and together we shall propose this motion. Thank you.
The opposition, we're ready for your rebuttal. You have 3 minutes.
I honor the floor and the House at large. Stella Nguku, Mbooni Girls. Well, I stand here first of all. I beg to differ with the first proposer, where you talked about religious signs being offensive. I'd like you to explain how offensive are religious signs. Actually, religious signs show the freedom of worship. It shows how they embrace the freedom of worship. Secondly, you also talked about child related to dressing hijab. Is hijab a religious sign on a national building, or is hijab just a dressing? Please clarify that. Then, you also talked about acceptance of religious signs. The people will not accept other religions when they see the religious signs on the national buildings. Well, my biology states that repeated stimuli evokes the right response. And the more you see these signs, the more you get used to it. The more you get it into your mind that these signs must be there. And we have to tolerate each and every religion. I still stand to oppose this motion that religious signs should be banned from national buildings. One, some of these religious signs on national buildings are a source of inspiration and motivation to cope up with the ups and downs of life. Take, for example, in China, the majority are Buddhist. So these religious signs on national buildings, like the lotus flower, signifies purity and enlightenment. The victorious banner shows the victorious battle. The endless knot, or the mandala, shows eternal harmony. That's how they see it. That's the unifying factor, that they see this endless knot and know, yes, we are one. We are unified, we are in harmony, we live in peace, and we love each other. So we should not even try to ban these religious signs. Some of these religious signs on national buildings assist in locating places. You ask how? Take, for example, the crescent moon and the crescent moon and the star of the Muslims. The crescent moon faces north. And from my class 4 knowledge, we were actually taught that if this side is north, then my right hand is east, my left hand is west, and my back side is south. Then they act as landmarks. Some of these religious signs on national buildings promote economical growth. I know you'll ask me why. But some of them are tourist attraction. Take an example, the pyramids of Giza in Egypt. They are national buildings having religious signs of Islam. And Egypt takes that as an advantage, earning foreign exchange from it. Tourists come in, day out, and they are developing even the economy. Thank you.
May we have questions? 2 for the proposers.
Thank you. Salif Nyambok from Light Academy, and my question goes to the first proposer. You said that the 9/11 attacks in America led to Muslim clothes being alleged to be related to terrorism in the UK. First of all, I'd like you to give us some factual evidence that you got this information. Thank you.
I'm Karen from the Moiforces Academy, Lanet, and I have a question to the second proposer who say that religious signs lead to insecurity. So will you please verify this point to us and also show us incidences of insecurity which have arisen due to religious symbols?
May we have 2 questions for the opposers?
I'm Naomi Morande from Nembu Girls High School. The first proposer said examples of these signs are like the cross on Christian churches and the crescent and moon on Muslim mosques. And the second opposer said that they are like tourist attraction. How do they attract tourists? Do tourists come and stand and see and then they give us foreign exchange? I don't think so.
I'm Joseph Njao from Olympic. The opposers actually stated the Constitution and said that the Constitution allows the use of the religious symbols. Well, then I have the Constitution, and may I read for you? It states that every person has the right, either individually or in a community with others, in public or in private, to manifest any religion or belief through worship, practice, teaching, or observance, including the observance of a day of worship. Concerning the symbols, please elaborate. Thank you.
The third proposer, take the stage.
Religious signs, religious signs, religious signs. Do we really have to show how religious we are to the public visibly? I, Dan Fuller from the Dagoretti High School, will tell you why we are not supposed to show our religious signs visibly. But first, let me answer your questions. About the European bombing. In Europe, in UK, after the bombing in 1911, Muslims were really discriminated because they were really searching. And according to our definition, religious signs are signs or events, signs which means events, and religious events or religious actions or religious marks. And also, this is a religious mark, this is a religious event. And this is a religious symbol, a clothing, because it signifies your religion. And the people in Europe, after the bombing, they discriminated the Muslims. Religious signs are offensive because when a religious sign is on a building, definitely, I'm not belonging to that affiliation. We have different religions. We have the Christianity, definitely, the Muslim, the Buddhist, the New Age. We have very many. The New Age believe that we are gods ourselves. The Christians, in specific, believe that there is a supreme God. So, if you tell a Christian that we ourselves are God, and that mark is on a national building, how will it take you? This will create offense. This will create offense amongst ourselves, definitely. So, indeed, it creates offense. Discrimination. It creates discrimination. It brings such discrimination. Let's take, for example, Nadia Ewedi of the Britain. He was working for the British Airways, which is a company, definitely a national building. She was working there, but she was fired. Why? Because she was visibly putting on her religious symbol. That is the crucifix. She belonged to the Christian side. So, if we do not have religious symbols in national buildings, we won't be discriminated. Let's have that uniformity. A suit, it doesn't matter. We are not supposed to show how religious we are. But at the same time, we have not been told that we are not supposed to worship. Yes, you're supposed to worship that, but who has asked you to come to the national building showing off how religious you are? Nobody. Thank you.
third opposer, you have 3 minutes.
I honor the floor at large. Questions have been raised and you're wondering what are the answers. I, Jane Aching from Mbooni Girls, is here to present with you with factual evidences of the above questions. Somebody first asked if crosses or the crescent moon found on churches or in mosques are religious sign on national buildings. I think you misquoted the first opposer. What she said was that some of these signs are found on national buildings, and a church is not one of them. She clearly gave out examples of forms of national buildings. One of them was the parliament, the cabinet, etc. On to the second question, somebody asked about what the second proposer said. How are these religious signs generating foreign exchange through tourist attractions? I'll take the example of the pyramids of Giza in Egypt. This is a national building which actually has religious symbols on it. These religious symbols are written in form of writings and pictorials. They attract tourists on annual basis. When these tourists come, what do we get? Foreign exchange. What does it do? It boosts the economy of the country. Third question was about the constitution stipulating about religious signs. Religious signs, having them on national buildings, is a form of freedom of worship. If I have a religious sign in a particular building, I'm actually embracing it as a type of religion in a specific country, and it's a form of freedom of worship. Then some of the proposers said that an official was fired for wearing a crucifix. Now, I would like to pose a very critical question. Is a crucifix a religious sign on a national building? Or are you trying to tell us that human beings have turned into national buildings? They also stated that some of these religious signs are offensive. How are they offensive? Can you give us clear definitions of how a crucifix or a crescent moon and a star can be offensive? I don't find it offensive. As you were told by some of my opposers, as biology states, repeated stimuli generates what? Acceptance. You have to accept other people's religion and understand to accommodate everyone else. Not simply because you find something here which is not part of your religion, you become offended. I beg to differ with that. On to other points, religious signs on national buildings should not be banned. Some of them act as stimulators of the mood of festivities. And I'll ask a very simple question. What is Christmas without a Christmas tree? What is Easter without an Easter bunny? These are religious signs on national buildings during festivities. Thank you.
Closing statements from the proposing team.
Ladies and gentlemen of the House, we have seen how prejudice, religious and political insecurities have taken over the realm that is this world. And someone here said that repeated stimulus causes acceptance. I beg to differ. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So you cannot tell us that if we repeat it will be accepted. And I still ask you again, I beg and I beckon you, join our side. Because we tell the truth, even in darkness. We shall show you the light when there's darkness. And together we shall ban religious signs in national buildings. We have seen how the prejudice the society has shown on us. And again, I shall repeat, insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. Let us not do that anymore. Thank you.
Here, the last opposer give us their final statement.
Freedom of worship simply means being publicly Hindu, Islam, Christianity, or any other religion that you belong to. So I do not think religious signs hurt even a fly if they exist on national buildings. So I strongly oppose the motions that religious signs should be banned from national buildings. And statistics clearly shows us 79% of people agree that religious signs should be maintained on national buildings, and only 21% disagree. The range is quite large. And over 400 religions are being recognized as we have these religious signs on various buildings. We have over 400 religious signs. If we could at least have a particular national building representing each and every, we are embracing a religious world. Mbooni girls, we rest our case.
Dagoretti. Cyrus, you had a bumpy start, but you composed yourself, you managed. However, all through as you gave your submissions, you would touch your head. There were signs to show that you were a little bit distracted. And at some point, you actually supported your opponents in your submissions. And so that in itself was a penalty on our table. Daniel, you have a very good voice and you're very confident. However, if you just work on a little bit of style in your delivery, you'll be able to capture the audience. It is also good to know that when you're debating, we're expecting you to involve us as the audience. However, you did well. Dan, you have a very good voice. You command a presence and you're very articulate. However, you make wrong references. For example, you mentioned 911 happening in Europe. I don't know which specific country exactly, but we know it's not there at all. Where did it happen? The United States, is it? When you're referring to Britain, you say the Britain. I think you wanted to say the Great Britain or just Britain. So just check on your mastery of language and then you'll have a good flow. You're good, however.
Let me talk to the girls, Mbooni. Start with Mule. Very creative use of flashcard. If I call it a flashcard, I think it's for the very first time in debate I've seen, great debaters, I've seen a student coming with a flashcard. Nonetheless, the motion really required you at least to give us a visual aid so that we see what you're talking about. You brought sense to the motion, owing to the fact that Cyrus began and he had a bumpy start. You brought good sense to the motion. And I also love your style of communication. Stella, good rebuttal. Should I call it effective rebuttal? I can see you when you debate. I can equally feel you. You use your hands very well to reinforce your idea. That is good. You also use your face, actually, to capture the mood of the moment. That is good. Your style also of presentation is good. Finally, Jane, I think that was good response to questions. Questions that were asked, you try to respond to them rather effectively. You know your task, and you have also integrated your style of, you've integrated possibly verbal and non-verbal communication. Nonetheless, there were lapses here and there in your language. Some things that you said, especially when you're giving us the percentages, partly there was lapse in your language. You can always work on how to improve on the lapse in your languages, and also possibly how to make the flow of your ideas very convincing, and so that the people are able to follow you. You can make a good debater. You still have a little growing to do before you become a very stable debater. Nonetheless, it was a fair presentation from you.
This is a motion that is very divisive, but also very uniting. When you think about religion and how it has the ability to unite people and also divide people. And so it was interesting to listen to your submissions. Mbooni girls, a great teamwork demonstrated there. Winnie, you start off very well, and I like the fact that you make reference to the Constitution. Stella, again, a good rebuttal. That's all I'll say there. And Jane, a good debater. I was hoping that Dagoretti High School would come on, and many times you referred to the hijab and to the cross, and the question of whether those are religious signs on buildings. The motion is religious signs should be banned from national buildings, from, not on. And that in itself was to your advantage, and you did not utilize it, unfortunately. All the best to the two teams.
The judges gave Dagoretti High School 60%. Give them a round of applause. The judges also awarded Mbooni Girls High School with 70.8%. They are our winners for the debates.
The fairer sex seems to have taken this debate with quite a margin, but bravo to both teams, and thank you for watching. I am Mariam Bishar.
And I am Austin Nyambok.
The winning school will get an ICT chill-out zone with the widescreen TV, computers, webcams, and internet connection. The teacher from the winning school gets 100,000 shillings courtesy of Chase Bank. The winning students each get a tablet courtesy of Safaricom, a gift hamper from Unilever, and a gift hamper from mimi.co.ke. And together, they all win the title, The Great Debaters. May the best school win.